Good morning. Welcome to the sixth and final meeting of the Interim Joint Committee on Local Government. I'd like to call it to order, and I'd like to ask the Secretary to please call the roll.
Senator Chambers Armstrong, Senator Elkins,
Present.
Senator Harper Angel, Senator Mays Bledsoe, Senator McDaniel,
Here.
Senator Nemus,
Present.
Senator Storm, Senator Thayer,
Here.
Senator Wheeler, Senator Williams,
Here.
Representative Bentley, Representative Bowling,
Here.
Representative Bray,
Present.
Representative Brown,
Here.
Representative Chester Burton, Representative Dixon, Representative Doan,
Present.
Representative Fleming, Representative Frazier Gordon,
Yes.
Representative Freeland,
Present.
Representative Hart,
Here.
Representative Imes,
Here.
Representative Justice, Representative Lockett, Representative Meredith, Representative Proctor, Representative Raymer,
Here.
Representative Stalker,
Present.
Representative Stevenson, Representative Thomas,
Present.
Senator Mills,
I'm here.
Representative Bridges.
Here. Having a quorum present, we are now constituted to do business. First thing I'd like to do is we're going to take a moment to recognize the members of the committee who will not be returning in the 2025 session. And at this time, I'd like to turn it over to my co-chair, Senator Mills.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have two members that have been longtime members of State and Local Government Committee and that are retiring. And the first is Denise Harper Angel, and Denise is not here today. And the second is Senator and Leader Damon Thayer. And we want to recognize him, and we'd like to give him a little bit of time to give us some wisdom on all of his years. He's been on this great committee, chaired it many years, and we really appreciate Damon's service and friendship. And Damon, say a few words.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. As you know, I'm sort of shy in front of these microphones and cameras. Really don't know what to say. No, thank you. I've been on this committee a long time. I chaired it from 2007 until 2013 when I became floor leader. And it's a great committee. It tackles so many big issues that are important to our districts. I've had some great staff over the years. Of course, Mark Mitchell, CSA since 2007, I think. Got to work with Alicia Miller, Judy Fritz, Greg Woosley, just tremendous team of people who do a great job for everybody on the committee, but in particular helping the chairs get prepped. And then from the Senate President's office for the longest time, Brianna Carroll was my staff administrator from the partisan side, from the Senate President's office, and she was terrific. We did a lot of good things in this committee, redistricting, of course, pension reform, Senate Bill 2, which I would strongly urge you not to tinker with, despite the fact that once I'm gone, there will be people who will try to get you to tinker with it. On behalf of the taxpayers of Kentucky, I would urge you not to tinker. It's working well. We're getting our public pension systems back on track, but if we take any step backwards, you guys are going to cause yourself a big mess that you're going to have to deal with somewhere down the road. So it's been a great run, and it's been a fun committee. It's a lot of work, as you know, Mr. Chairman. When you chair local government in the Senate, you also chair state government. So it's like chairing a couple committees at the same time. But it was really enjoyable, and I just want to say that the person who was my successor as chairman of this committee is still greatly missed. My friend Joe Bowen took over as chair of this committee after I left, and of course Joe retired and then passed away after he left the Senate, and I still miss him greatly. He was a really great man, and I miss seeing him and miss having calls even after he left the Senate. We kept in touch, and just want to remember him here. But people ask me how I feel, knowing that I'm counting down here. I feel great. Everything's good. Just time to write a new chapter. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Thayer, and thank you, Co-Chair Mills. We in the House, we have three members also that will not be returning. Unfortunately, none of them were able to be here today, but we have Representative Danny Bentley, Representative Jonathan Dixon, and Representative Jacob Justice. I don't want to step out of line here, but I would ask you to keep Representative Bentley in your prayers. He's been facing some health issues, and he was hoping to be here today. But anyway, they have all three accomplished quite a bit in their term here, and we're proud of their service. And I couldn't have asked to have better colleagues than those three. So, with that, we'll move on. Do I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes for the October 22nd meeting?
Second.
So moved. The minutes are approved, and then at this time, is there anyone on the committee that has guests they would like to recognize today? Representative Bowling.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got two guests here today that I'm excited about. The 87th District is well represented. First of all, coming here with Keiko. He's the president-elect, soon-to-be president, Harlan County Judge Executive Dan Mosley. I know he'll be at the table today presenting with Keiko, and it's always good to see my friend Judge Mosley. And then I believe he'll be at the table with KLC and the vice president. Is that correct? But current Pineville mayor and Senator-elect Scott Maiden is here today as well. So obviously it's always good to see folks from my district and to see that the 87th District is well represented. Both really good friends of mine, and proud to have them up here today. Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Co-Chair Mills has a guest he'd like to introduce.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have a good friend of mine, Union County Judge Adam Onan is here. He'll be at the table with Keiko as well, and he oversees in his county a lot of coal mining, and we still have coal miners in our district. I've got about 1,300 coal miners in my district, so Adam, his county still pulls the black rock out of the ground and does well with that, and we appreciate Judge Onan being here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Freeland has a guest.
Just want to say good morning and welcome to my mayor from my hometown, Benton, Kentucky. Rita Dotson is here, and I served with her on the Benton City Council for 6 years, and then 2 years served as under her as when she was the mayor. So she's still currently the mayor of Benton and president of KLC this year. So welcome her, and look forward to hearing her testimony this morning.
I see a familiar face out there that I'm going to Judge Executive from Callaway County, Kenny Imes is here. And as any of the new ones coming in, if you want to know how to have a close relationship to your state legislator, he's the man to talk to. I have a special guest. Okay. Senator Thayer.
Yes, I have a special guest. I'd like to recognize my House counterpart for a few more minutes. Leader Stephen Rudy is here today, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Local Government Committee, Leader.
Now he's got to stay the whole time.
I request the first speakers to approach the table, and while you're doing this, should have asked you before we started the introduction of guests, but have a seat. And if you don't mind, introduce yourselves for the records and proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. J.D. Cheney, CEO, Executive Director at League of Cities.
Rita Dotson, Mayor of the City of Benton and the President of KLC.
I'm Paul Sandifer, Mayor of Beaver Dam, Kentucky, and the First Vice President of KLC.
I'm Scott Maiden. I'm the Mayor of Pineville and the second VP of KLC.
Mr. Chairman, you ready for us?
Yes, sir. We're ready.
All right. Well, thank you all and members of the committee. It's been a while since we've had opportunity to testify. As you all know, this is a ritual for us. During the summertime, our board of directors meets and painstakingly goes through, and Senator Bledsoe knows this, she was on the board for a while, a myriad of issues for city governments. And the board considers those and whether to add them to the agenda. It is a lengthy agenda. We feel like we get get a lot done in the previous session, and then the next summer it's like it's just reloaded with the same amount of issues. A lot of them are smaller legislative issues that we discuss through the year, but we want to get those issues out there as we do that. Just so you know, just some background, we have a large board of directors. We have 68 members on the board of directors, and it's set that way for the League of Cities so we can ensure that we have every size of city, every form of municipal government that's out there in every region of the state. Also, we have all of our affiliate organizations, the president of the Clerks Association, the president of the City Attorneys Association. They all sit on that board of directors to form a city legislative agenda, which is why I think sometimes you see a lengthier list of policy items from the League of Cities. So it's a process, and so we get our newly elected leadership up here to present that every single year. This is my first female president since I've been executive director of the League of Cities. So Mayor Dotson, she is doing a good job of keeping me straight. Mayor Sandifer from Beaver Dam, and we did invite our second vice president because his term's going to be short-lived to join us as well. And I'm going to yield to him before we get into the substance of the policy. But Mayor Scott Maiden from Pineville, that Representative Bowling introduced, has been the mayor of Pineville for several years. In fact, it's in his blood. He's a third-generation mayor of Pineville. His dad was president of the League of Cities, and he was headed in that direction. But we're really privileged to have him with us today. And if it's okay, Mr. Chairman, may I yield to KLC second vice president and Mayor Scott Maiden of Pineville.
Thank you, JD. I really don't have anything prepared. JD didn't give me heads up on that, but I'm glad to be here today. I really came up to support KLC and to meet some of you guys. I worked with Philip and Adam during my long 11-day election that I just got finished running, and you take out the Sundays, and I attended the funeral with Senator Wheeler and Mr. Bowling, and down to about 8, and so a day of running or two, so it was down to about 6 or 7 days. So it was interesting. I look forward to working with each and every one of you all, and I'll be here before I know it, I guess. But appreciate y'all letting me be part of this today.
Thank you, Mayor. I also want to mention KLC staff. In addition to the elected city officials, we're going to have a new looking legislative team that'll probably meet with you throughout the session. A new legislative director, Gracie Kelly, has joined us. In later November, we'll have a legislative council join us on staff, and we also have Nick Storm here, who does our communications. Deanna Brandstetter is here. Scott Tremalis, our research economist, and then of course you all know many of the lobbyists that we work with as well that kind of guide us through this process. So we'll be touching base as we come closer to January and into January with you all about the particulars of our legislative agenda as it goes forward. Just as a general matter, we like to go over the perspective of why cities matter, why it's important in terms of Kentucky moving forward, that we have strong and capable cities that are able to make decisions at the local level. We are, it's cliche, but we are the economic engines of the state. 75% of all economic transactions that occur in Kentucky are inside the boundaries of one of our 410, I believe now, cities that we have. We may be down to 409. We had one dissolve during the election. And the administrative dissolution bill that Chairman Mills ran a couple of years ago, starting to take work with some of those defunct cities. 4 out of 5 jobs are in cities, and that's only 3.6% of the total land mass of Kentucky, where all that activity occurs. About 60% of Kentucky lives inside of a city, and of course most of the utility services, those basic services, public safety and utility services, are provided by Kentucky cities. So we've always, from our relationship with the state government, known how important it is that we have a strong relationship with the state in order for our cities to thrive and prosper and help your constituents prosper, which is why we're so deeply engaged in this legislative effort. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our elected leadership. I'm proud to introduce Benton Mayor, Mayor Rita Dotson.
Thank you, JD. Thank you to all of you for giving us this opportunity to come today and present our issues for KLC, what we have coming up in the future. Our first priority is road funding allocation. The quality and availability of city roads play a crucial role in a community's livability and are essential for economic development. According to the Kentucky Office of the State Budget Director, Kentucky will experience a drop of 3.6 cents per gallon in the motor fuels tax during the first 6 months of fiscal year 2025. Currently, the motor fuel taxes are the only portion of the road fund shared with local governments. By statute, 48.2% of motor fuel taxes go to local governments, with 18.3% county road aid, 22.2% rural secondary aid, and 7.7% municipal road aid. The county and rural secondary are split using the formula of FILS. The municipal is based upon population from the 2020 census. In the infographic, we break down the disparity between cities and counties regarding revenue and expenditures for street maintenance. So you can see in fiscal year 2023, 14% was city, 35% county. So that's basically, if I'm understanding right, JD, 14% is what we put in to finish paving our streets that we had allocated to be paved.
Yes.
Am I correct there? Okay. And city streets are 25 to 40% more expensive to pave. One thing is we have a curb and gutter system in most of our city streets. That requires milling frequently to get it down below the curb and gutter so that the water will run like it's supposed to do. Our streets are shorter, so the paving companies, when they come in, they have to pick up equipment, move it more frequently, so they bid more for that. And our city streets are traveled more heavily. For example, in fiscal year 2023, cities spent approximately $397 million to maintain and construct over 10,000 miles of city streets. In comparison, in fiscal year 2023, counties spent $381 million, yet had significantly more revenue despite their lower expenditures. Another example that I had, if I can find it, in the city of Mount Sterling, for every dollar that they spend paving roads or road aid money that they receive, they spend another $1.79 to pave their streets. In the city of Elizabethtown, they paved, say if they paved in 2022 13.1 miles of streets, they received $594,000. The cost for paving was $1,835,000. So that was a difference that the general fund covered of $1,241,000. So you can see a significant difference there. On average, over the last 5 fiscal years, this trend has remained consistent. During that time, cities have spent an average of $353.4 million on streets and roads, while counties have expensed $322 million. Despite spending less, counties receive a significantly larger share of the revenues. A previous agreement between KLC and the Kentucky Association of Counties stipulated that local government would be equal when motor fuel revenues were above $825 million. I don't think that we've reached that yet, right, JD? Okay. The state would then split the local government portion equally between the two road aid programs, the municipal road aid and county road aid, allowing 13% to cities and counties, each from 48.2% of the local government share. Finally, local governments support a funding model that would ensure a portion of electric vehicle charges are provided to them and should continue efforts with state to look at modernizing the formula in the event that motor fuels tax receipts decline in the future. Next is restaurant revenue. Another top priority is restaurant revenue. KLC supports the ability for, excuse me, for all cities. I'm so sorry. Right now, only cities that were previously classified as 4th or 5th class cities have this ability, while it is denied to other similarly situated cities. KLC supports legislation that would sever the statute that limits the ability of cities that are of a specific size to collect consumption-based restaurant revenue, rather than imposing a net profit or gross receipt tax on restaurant businesses. This approach ensures that every city can benefit from the economic advantages of restaurant revenue to support increased tourism in our communities. Stable sources of revenue are vital to the successful operation of our cities as the cost of providing essential services continue to increase. Protecting existing city revenue sources is extremely important to us. The KLC Board of Directors unanimously voted to oppose any efforts to centralize the collection of local revenue. Centralized collections are complicated, costly, and can lead to errors, delays, and a potential loss of revenue. To be more specific, a proposal is being circulated right now by lobbyists for the upcoming session to have the state collect local occupational license taxes. Because occupational taxes account for more than 60% of all municipal revenues, we cannot afford to have a lobbyist-led experiment with the collections and remittance of these revenues. We will look forward to actively engaging in advocacy efforts with the General Assembly to reject this ill-informed effort. We will also vigorously oppose any efforts to eliminate city taxpayer offsets on any taxes, including occupational taxes or insurance premium taxes. Cities are revenue limited and need every tool possible to continue to be the economic drivers for the state. A recurring issue that aligns with the previous topics is the need to modernize city revenue options. As we are revenue limited, it is essential for cities to generate the funds necessary to provide the services Kentuckians expect, particularly as the state shifts toward consumption-based taxes. A 131-year-old provision in the Kentucky Constitution hinders the legislature's ability to comprehensively reform local government tax policies. Section 181 of the Constitution restricts cities to raising necessary revenue primarily through a few options: property and occupational taxes and franchise fees. Consequently, cities are forced to rely heavily on revenue generated from productivity. As the state begins to shift to a consumption-based tax model, cities should also be afforded this ability and flexibility so that they can continue to provide critical services and meet all the demands of their citizens. Kentucky needs to continue monitoring the independence and administration of the county employees' retirement system to ensure that the local pension system continues to operate efficiently and in the best interest of employers and members. KLC advocates ongoing monitoring of KPPA administrative expenses paid by CSRS, as well as the overall operations and governance of the local pension system. It is important to note that individualized focus of CSRS has led to higher investment returns compared to other retirement systems, supporting a continued upward trajectory of the funded status of the system and the affordability of the employer contribution rates. Substance abuse remains a costly and tragic issue plaguing every city in Kentucky. In 2023, 1,984 Kentuckians died from drug overdoses. Despite a recent decline, many communities still experience far too many fatalities. This ongoing crisis continues to strike at the heart of the quality of life in every single Kentucky community, and KLC will continue to engage in public policy discussions that address the public safety, treatment, recovery, and workforce aspects related to this issue. Much like the disparity that exists among cities related to the restaurant tax, there is an inequity that exists among cities related to their ability to use alcohol regulatory license fees. Legislation was enacted in 2019 legislative session to allow cities with populations under 20,000 to impose a fee of up to 5% and grandfathered in those cities with populations over 20,000 or those that had implemented a rate greater than 5%. Kentucky must extend authority to all cities, allowing them to impose a regulatory license fee on the gross receipt of alcoholic beverage sales, rather than limiting it to cities below 20,000 in population. This will ensure that taxpayers do not bear any unfunded financial burdens, such as the additional cost of additional policing and regulatory measures. KLC also advocates for legislation that would permit the imposition of the same license at the state level, creating harmony between local and state license fees. County jail overcrowding. Last session, we saw more divisive legislation introduced than we have seen in recent memory. While the cities support counties in their efforts to address their needs and priorities with the state, KLC will oppose any legislation that would impose any incarceration cost on cities for the operation of county jails. Rather than continue to drive a wedge between local governments, cities desire to work with their county counterparts. This is the way it works in the vast majority of localities across the state. Transient room taxes from web-based platforms. With the support of the Kentucky Travel Industry Association and Kentucky's tourism commissions, legislation was passed in 2022 clarifying that online travel rental companies are required to collect and remit transient room taxes to local governments. However, despite compliance from most online rental companies, some have refused to follow the law and had advocated for the centralization of local transient room taxes. KLC opposes the centralization of local transient room tax revenue collections and supports the enforcement of compliance by web-based platforms such as Airbnb with state law. In fact, KLC and KTIA and our cities and tourist commissions are currently engaged in litigation in an attempt to get those companies that ignore the laws that have been enacted by the General Assembly into compliance. Utility franchise agreements. Current Kentucky law requires utilities to maintain a franchise agreement for the use of rights away within the local governments they serve, but it does not specify penalties for failure to comply. The lack of enforcement leaves municipalities nearly powerless if private corporations choose not to meet their legal obligations to obtain or renew franchise agreements. Additionally, KRS 96.010 mandates that all parties be notified of the sale of a new franchise 18 months before any existing utility franchise expires. As a result, Kentucky must implement safeguards for local governments and establish penalties for failure to comply with constitutional requirements. Furthermore, the current 18-month notification period for the sale of a new franchise should be reduced to 6 months or less. Planning and zoning training. In an effort to recruit and retain volunteers to serve on planning commissions and administrative bodies, KLC supports an amendment to reduce the training requirements for members serving on planning and zoning and commission boards of adjustments. Current law, as outlined in KRS 147A.027, requires members to complete 4 hours of orientation training with 1 year of their appointment or within 120 days following the appointment. These requirements far exceed those for other commissions and boards and can detract from valuable time spent with work and family and create a disincentive for individuals to join these boards, leading to a decline in service on these boards. Similarly, the proposed changes could encourage greater civic engagement from community members who were previously deterred by the training requirements. Along with the streamlining of training requirement hours, we're also proposing that the continued training requirements include a requirement that members of planning commissions and boards of adjustments receive training on the impact of land use decisions on housing accessibility, one of the biggest issues facing our community. These folks are volunteers and they're required to train for 8 hours at this time. Disaster response funds. KLC is advocating for amendments to state statutes that would allow all cities within a county to appoint an emergency responder director responsible for developing emergency plans. Additionally, the amendments would enable cities to directly request state funds from Kentucky Emergency Management. It would also require an annual review of state-funded programs, ensuring that input is gathered from all cities within a county. Now I would like to introduce Mayor Paul Sandifer, who is the first Vice President of Kentucky League of Cities.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to come and speak before you all today. So I'm going to provide a brief overview of the remaining issues we have on our 2025 agenda. The first one is newspaper.
Excuse me, can you pull that mic up to you closer?
Sure thing. Sorry about that. The first one deals with newspaper publication reforms. Currently, a limited number of Kentucky cities can post their documents and legal documents and all their stuff on websites. That's not the case for all cities. I think that was for those counties of 20,000 or more. It's an antiquated method with the communication results in additional expense for cities that already face limited revenues. The technology in this day and time is advanced. Most people are going to be online. That's where they get their information from. And we just feel that this would be more adequate to get the news out to our people. Furthermore, many local newspapers are no longer being published. Some are limited publication, and some are only online and digital. Like I said, I beg to differ. In 2020, House Bill 195 limited the population to 80,000 or greater where they could do their publications online. And we just feel that would be a step in the right direction for all cities to be able to do so. The next item is voluntary training. There is a statute on the books that regarding voluntary training for elected officials, including mayors, council members, and commissioners. We would like to seek an amendment that would give greater flexibility to the local and city governments in order to incentivize to get their commissioners and council members and mayors more active on training to be able to keep up to date to take care of our cities. Another issue we're advocating for is a permanent solution to House Bill 360 from 2023, ensuring longevity of the TIF district agreements that were established before the state income tax reductions. This will allow the collection of the estimated revenue promised by the state to those communities that created TIFs prior to the income tax reductions taking place. Housing shortages is another area of concern with everyone all across the state. Housing is vital to attracting and retaining a skilled workforce as well as improving the quality of life for residents. KLC's advocacy position is to help the cities manage land use through effective planning and zoning at the local level. Local decisions are best made on the local level. Therefore, KLC and its member cities oppose any state mandates that would override local land use decisions. To enhance the availability and supply of affordable housing is a critical area within the state that we all must work together to take care of. Opioid settlement funds. The use of the settlement funds should be expanded to support law enforcement and first responders on the front lines, provide the cities receiving the funds comply with the limitations in the master agreement. The CERS health insurance benefits. KLC supports reasonable modifications to enhance health insurance benefits for city retirees under the county employees retirement system, while also safeguarding the health of the trust. Municipal audits. KLC will collaborate with the Kentucky Auditor of Public Accounts and the Society for CPAs to craft legislation that establishes alternative requirements for completing city audits. This is essential for assuring that cities can meet statutory deadlines, and this step is necessary because of the limited supply of certified public accountants available to complete audits. This in itself is putting cities behind in their deadlines and rendering them ineligible to receive state funds. Any proposal will maintain the level of transparency and accountability that we all expect. Pension spiking exceptions. Cities support codifying the court opinion related to pension spiking, which would ensure compliance with the Kentucky Public Pension Authority. This exemption to the pension spiking statute would apply to cases involving market-based pay adjustments for employees that result in salary increases exceeding 10%. EMS fee collections. As ambulance runs continue to rise and the state faces a shortage of paramedics, we must take proactive steps to ensure emergency services remain viable. KLC is advocating for the ability of city or county governments to collect emergency medical service fees to fund these essential services, similar to how the 911 works now. Expanding building code jurisdiction. With increasing frequency of natural disasters, it is essential to streamline processes and reduce red tape. We propose that cities with expanded enforcement jurisdiction over building codes be allowed to operate in other cities across the Commonwealth, especially in times of disaster. ABC officer police powers. KLC supports legislation that clearly defines the peace officer power of alcohol beverage control officers. And our final item is State Fire Marshal Office. To enhance the accountability, transparency, and enforcement, KLC is advocating for a reorganization of the Office of the State Fire Marshal while still ensuring adequate support and funding for its critical functions. I would like to thank you on behalf of our group. Thank you for taking your time to let us come speak with you today and learn more about the issues confronting our cities. Mayor Dotson, Mayor Maiden, JD, and myself would be happy to answer any questions that you may have at this time.
Okay, sounds like you've got a thorough list. We do have a few questions. I've got Senator McDaniels first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, guys, I've got to commend you on bringing a list this long for a session that's this short. I would encourage you to develop some focus. I know that's tough with a board as big as you have. It can get rather unwieldy and different regions have different things. But what you've brought us is totally incomprehensible to be done in this amount of time, and you really need to get focused. So I would start with that. Secondly, I would have to say I feel fairly insulted by the idea that it's a lobbyist-led effort for centralized collection, because let me tell you, if there's one thing I hear about from business on a regular basis, they despise the number of local and municipal returns they have to file. I have over 46 myself in my small company in Kenton County. And so if you want to continue to insult local taxpayers, local businesses, keep coming here with lines like lobbyist-led effort, because there is nothing on your agenda or grassroots that I hear from people than centralized collection. They're tired of having 60,000 governments in this state. And if we're going to continue down this path, we may start to talk about the idea of consolidation of some of these local governments, because I'll tell you what, taxpayers are tired of it. A lot of these bills are bills I have filed, bills I've helped with in the past. But you guys need to get some reality about where your own taxpayers are before you come in here, and I encourage you to develop some focus. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any response? Okay.
I don't think I heard a question there, but
Okay. Senator Wheeler has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I guess this goes to the division of the road funds. I mean, as I understand it, and I believe this was done since I've been here, maybe around in 2021, there was a discussion about reallocating the formula fifths. But as I recall at that time, was that not predicated on a 10-cent increase in the gas tax to bring more revenue into the system at that time?
You know, I do not think it was predicated on on that. It was put in that bill when former Representative Santoro,
that was my recollection,
and the Judge Executives Association and others agreed to that. We agreed to that formula above the $825 million, Senator, to fairly split it so that way it would not be harmful to any county, and it was put into that larger bill. That's where it was surfaced. But listen, if KCO doesn't agree to it, then they certainly have the right to change their mind or stipulate, but that was our understanding of the previous agreement. It is an equitable proposal about fixing that road funding formula, and it's our position. But I would not characterize it as predicated upon it being part of the increase in the gas tax.
Well, I mean,
that's
I
from our
agree. We go to
perspective.
different sessions, but that was the previous arrangement, was it not?
It was embodied in that bill,
And I
Representative
guess
Santoro's bill.
the only other, and I get it. I mean, I think that I get pissed off when I drive through my town. I hit a pothole and it throws your alignment out. I get that, and of course, I get a lot more complaints. I will tell you, of course, I have a very rural district. I get a lot more complaints about the condition of my county roads and to some degree rural state roads than I do any of my municipal roads. So, I know Pike County alone has like 963 miles of county roads, and the city of Pikeville maybe 50, if that. You do have certain obligations, at least in rural Kentucky, that do, I think, call into question as to whether or not it would be wise to take away any money under the current formula.
Okay, we have Senator Thayer with a few questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank Chairman McDaniel for saying everything that I was thinking. Now I don't have to repeat it. I do find it comical that you guys come before this committee before a 30-day session and you have 1,000 points of light agenda. We talked about this last year. Clearly, you didn't listen, but that's okay because after today, you won't have to listen to me anymore. So good luck with all that. I do want to point out, following up on Senator Wheeler's comments, all the food that gets into our cities to feed the people who live in the cities come from the rural areas, and they require good roads to get there to make sure that all the people in the cities can eat. So, I feel like this is Groundhog Day today, folks. The only good thing for me is I won't have to listen to it again next year. So I do want to say one thing positive and welcome Senator-elect Maiden to the Senate Republican Caucus. But the way you had to be elected is not a good way to elect someone to a 4-year term. I think you would probably know and agree with that more than anybody. So there was a glitch in the law that after the unfortunate passing of Senator Turner and the election imminent, that there was a write-in campaign. That's a glitch, a loophole in the law that frankly none of us ever considered. That race should have gone to a special election to fill out a 4-year term, especially. And, for example, the late Senator Turner received thousands and thousands of votes from people who probably didn't even, they're the straight Republican ticket polls, who probably maybe even didn't realize that he had passed and couldn't even be eligible for the race. So I would strongly encourage members to consider changing the law in the unfortunate and unlikely event that what recently happened, if it happens again, that election be held by special election. So a broader swath of voters can decide who their senator is going to be for the next 4 years. Again, I'm glad you won. You may not have realized that I was helping behind the scenes, and I think you'll be a great senator. Your qualifications are excellent, and the league has found someone to carry all these bills. Good luck. I hope you've got a strong back. I wish you the best, but I would really strongly consider legislation in the next session to address this quirk or loophole in the law. It's just not right for the electorate. But I'm glad you're here, and I wish you the best of luck. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. With that, I believe that concludes your testimony. So we'll ask any final remarks KLC would like to make.
We do appreciate the opportunity. We are board led, and we do have all those affiliate associations that put these things on the board. We don't have any kind of misconceptions that every one of these things can make it. But we do feel like if it's brought up with their board, that we need to lay the issue out there to let you know that's being discussed among municipality, our affiliate organizations that we carry the water for, and lay that out. I agree, Senator McDaniel, on the need to focus resources. And we always continue to do that in practice, but we do want to lay out every issue that our board votes and those affiliate organizations bring to us. It's really important. That gives them their voice with you all in the relationship. So that's why it's always a long list.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. With that, I'd ask the next presenters to come forward.
We good, Shelley?
I believe we've got everything set up for your PowerPoint. So if you don't mind, introduce yourselves and proceed with your testimony.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excuse me, Jim Henderson, Executive Director with CAECO.
Adam O'Nan, Union County, Union County Judge Executive Adam O'Nan, First Vice President of CAECO.
Dan Mosley, Harlan County Judge Executive and President-elect of CAECO.
And we've got our very able Shelley Hampton here today helping us with the slides. So she's certainly much more than a slide presentation person to CAECO, but today that's her role. Thanks, Chairman Bridges, Chairman Mills, and members of the committee for inviting us here. First things first, we certainly want to start out our presentation with a hearty thank you. Counties have been incredibly fortunate over the past several sessions. The legislature has been extremely good to counties, and I have found that in my personal and professional life, thank yous are not said too often. So again, we want to say thank you on behalf of Kentucky's counties. Maybe a little different twist this morning. Before we jump into the meat of the presentation, I want to show you a couple of submissions from our annual art contest. This is a pretty popular thing we do with kids across the state as a way to populate the cover and the individual months in our little calendar that we put out for our members each year. It's called our I Love My Kentucky County Contest. It's open to students in grades K through 8. This year we received nearly 600 entries. Students have to submit an artist statement with their drawing or their painting. Students wrote about spending time in their county park or at their county fair, about road crews clearing snow in the winter, and about first responders helping everyone stay safe. This particular painting on the next slide here is from a 5th grade student, Layla Scoggins in Graves County, where they suffered the tremendous loss from the deadly December 2021 tornado, as you all know. The historic Graves County Courthouse in downtown Mayfield was completely destroyed, which is depicted in one side of this painting, but it's in the process of being rebuilt. And I assume this rendition on the right is kind of the new drawing of that courthouse. And here's what Layla wrote about her artwork. My county has been through a lot these past few years. The name of my painting is From the Rubble We Rise. We may have lost our courthouse and other buildings in Mayfield, but our spirit is still strong. And I think we sometimes take for granted the role that local government plays in our communities, particularly the county government for us. These pieces of art really serve as reminders of the impact that counties and the services that they provide have, even on our youngest residents. It's a great learning lesson for us each year to kind of see the perspective of our students and kind of what they view as what they think about when they think about their county. And as you all know, the historic county courthouses in every county really are symbols. They're kind of landmark representations of a community. So there's so much more than just the building where government is housed. They really are sometimes that embodiment of the county. And county officials are often the face of the community, reflecting the values and ideals of the people we represent. In Kentucky, we still put the name of our counties on our license plate. It's how we identify ourselves often. So as a former county official, I admit I'm a little bit biased in that, but that is the passion that we have here at CAECO. So with that, let's go right into our presentation today. Joining me today are two members of our executive committee, Harlan County Judge Dan Mosley and Union County Judge Adam O'Nan. In just a couple of days at our annual conference, Judge Mosley is going to be sworn in as our new 2024-25 president. Judge Onan will move up as president-elect. Actually, in the audience today is our outgoing president, who will be president through the remainder of this week, David Livingston from Scott County. And so both of these leaders have been very active in KCO from the very beginning of their time in public office. They've committed a lot of time and energy to learning and engaging with their fellow county officials. And that's on top of taking care of stuff back home as very active county judges. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Judge Mosley.
Thanks, Jim. I'd be remiss if I didn't begin my comments with, as I was walking in the annex this morning, I remember the last time I came to the annex, and it was to meet with my senator, Johnny Turner. And Johnny was a great friend of mine. His son was in my wedding. We go way back. And it certainly was a different feel walking in here this morning with him not here. I want to thank the members of the General Assembly that reached out. Many of you came to the visitation or the funeral mass. Senator Wheeler gave a remarkable eulogy that I know that Johnny would have been very proud of. And just wanted to mention that this morning before I begin my remarks. As many of you may know, KCO's membership is very diverse. Sometimes people think that KCO is made up mostly of county judges. While judge executives have an important voice within the association, KCO represents the interests of all the elected county officials. As you can see on this slide, KCO is made up of more than 1,500 elected county officials, ranging from the judge executives to the PVAs to the county coroners. This makes formulating a united legislative front a little more challenging. Each of these individuals are elected, and many of our electeds have constitutional authority. The day-to-day duties of a jailer are vastly different from those of a county clerk. For this reason, the 10 elected county offices have their own affiliate association in addition to being members of KCO. Even so, back in 1974, these 10 groups of elected county officials realized that their individual voices would be much stronger if they were united under one umbrella as KCO, one single voice for counties. This year is KCO's 50th anniversary as an association. Our annual conference begins tomorrow. You should have already received an invitation, but let me say again, we'd love to have you as our special guests at the conference. KCO is a very grassroots association. Our issues and priorities rise up directly from our membership. Each year, our KCO team hosts listening sessions throughout the state in the 15 area development district regions, gaining feedback from our members. Additionally, throughout the year, our members share ideas via conferences, trainings, meetings, helping educate our KCO team and our board on the issues that are most important at the county level. Ultimately, the KCO team helps bring focus to a few areas of emphasis and asks our 35-member board of directors to endorse these priorities. Some of these issues may sound familiar. Most of you won't be surprised at where our focus lies, but our approach going into the short session is to focus more of our efforts on helping legislators better understand what counties do, providing information and context to the various factors at play for counties. Today's presentation could be better described as a county update on the issues rather than a presentation filled with a lot of big requests. As Jim earlier stated, we have a lot to be thankful for. The General Assembly has been very good to counties over the past couple of sessions, and that hasn't gone unnoticed by our members. Thank you. Judge Onan and I are going to touch on two areas of focus, and Jim will wrap up with the final priority. Earlier this year, Chairman Mills invited a couple of our colleagues to testify on the financial pressures counties are facing with their jails. At that hearing, Leader Thayer aptly described the way the issue resonates with all of us. It certainly does feel like Groundhog Day. I mentioned it was KCO's 50th anniversary. If you look back at the issues that were being discussed around the time KCO was formed in the 1970s, it sounds a lot like the same things we're saying today. While that might seem disheartening to some, we'd prefer to reshape the conversation. The reason counties have been talking about jails for decades isn't just that jails put a strain on our county budgets, it's because it's at the heart of what counties do. Running the county jail is part of who we are. It's built into the responsibilities of county government. Counties are responsible for providing the incarceration of individuals arrested and those convicted of misdemeanors. And as political subdivisions of the state, we have a unique partnership in this work. Elements of the state criminal justice system overlap and intersect at the county level. For this reason, the state uses our county jails as the destination for many of the individuals convicted on lesser felony offenses against the state. Our approach today is focused on the state of our shared responsibility for jails. We're refocusing on how we can better work with the General Assembly to address these shared challenges. Today, there are 70 full-service jails, 4 regional jails, and 3 life safety jails. Those are jails that do not meet the standards to hold inmates long-term. 43 counties, including Judge Onan's, do not have a jail in their county, but are still responsible for providing for the care and housing of their own inmates. These counties contract to house inmates at neighboring county jails. And when we talk about the financial pressure jails put on our county budgets, this slide helps you see this in real numbers. Statewide, not counting Jefferson and Fayette counties, not counting those 2 counties, counties across the Commonwealth are supplementing their jail budgets with over $120 million in general funds. In Harlan County and many counties across the state, this situation has gotten much worse following the global pandemic. When I first came into office, Harlan County was spending approximately $400,000 a year on our county jail out of the general fund. In fiscal year 2023, we transferred a record $977,830 into the jail fund, which made up 29% of our general fund. Over the past 3 years, our county has transferred more than $2.4 million in general funds to our jail fund. For comparison, over the 3 years prior, only $849,000 had to be transferred, meaning we are transferring triple the amount of money today than was required just 4 to 6 years ago. These figures only cover operations cost. These figures do not include the debt service on the jail that was constructed in 2007, which we are still paying on to the tune of $400,000 a year in debt service. Closed county jails also feel pressure from the cost of county jails. Union County, Judge Onan's County, spends $750,000 from their general fund housing inmates in other counties. One of the major cost drivers for jails is medical costs. Significant changes are on the horizon for jail medical care. This year, a new federal mandate requires county jails to offer medically assisted treatment for inmates as part of the Americans with Disabilities Act. This new mandate means that if an inmate is prescribed medications associated with opioid recovery, we must make sure they have that treatment. As you probably know, once someone is arrested, their Medicaid coverage is suspended. A process is being developed for inmates to remain eligible for Medicaid or to be able to re-enroll in Medicaid at the end of their sentence. These changes could provide additional opportunities for counties in the state to work together on some shared solutions. We look forward to continuing discussions on ways counties and the state can address these and other challenges as part of our shared responsibility with jails. I'm going to pass it over to Judge Onan for the next part of our presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. It's an incredible privilege for me to be here today representing the people of Union County. It's also a real honor to have been elected by my peers as first vice president of CAECO, along with good county officials like my friend Dan Mosley. I'm also grateful to be testifying before a committee co-chaired by my own state senator. Thank you, Senator Mills, for all you do for Union County and our region. We've come a long way since playing pool at Henderson Community College. Judge Mosley did a great job telling you about the important role of counties as it relates to jail. I'd like to talk to you about our second CAECO priority, and that's preserving county revenues. As judge of the largest coal-producing county in the state, I have a deep appreciation
for the unique revenue streams that exist among our counties. Union County has historically relied on coal as a major economic driver, which has brought both opportunities and challenges to our county. Coal counties like mine and Judge Mosley's play a critical role in shaping the energy economy in Kentucky. As our nation's energy landscape and policies continue to evolve, a decline in coal production directly impacts counties like ours and the revenues generated by the coal economy. The reality is that Union County, like many coal counties, must do all we can to foster an economic climate that is diverse enough to withstand changes to the coal industry. We're working hard to attract new industries and create jobs that will still be resilient in tomorrow's economy. We're making the investment in our future now, using current revenue streams to help build an economy for the next generation of Union Countyans, of which I have 4 that refer to me as Pop in Union County. Whether it's coal severance or other unique revenues across our state, we depend on each of you in the legislature to help preserve our existing revenue streams to ensure we can continue to provide essential services for our counties. At KCO, we often say, when you've seen one county, well, you've seen one county. No 2 counties are exactly alike. And because we have such diversity among our counties, whether you're in a county of 10,000 people or 100,000, we realize that not all counties are equally benefit from all the current revenue options. This is why it is so important to keep all of our options available, allowing county leaders to figure out what works best for our communities. Most of our counties heavily rely on 3 primary sources of revenue: occupational taxes, property taxes, and insurance premium taxes. These sources of revenue are the foundation of county budgets, allowing county governments to provide essential services to their residents. However, just like every entity, counties face mounting financial pressures as the cost of providing services continues to rise, as exemplified by Judge Mosley's jail increases. To give you a clearer picture, here's a breakdown of the main revenue services for counties and how much each tax means to counties as a whole. In fiscal year 2023, counties collected $387 million in occupational license fees. The revenue source represents 44.5% of all county tax revenue collected statewide, excluding Jefferson and Fayette. You can see how dependent our counties are on this revenue source. It is essential. The tax is tied directly to the economic activities of our counties. Currently, 86 counties levy this tax. For Union County, having this tax has allowed us to keep a relatively low property tax rate, and our occupational tax is also lower than our surrounding counties. Because we have such a good jobs base, it generates a little more than $1.2 million of revenue for our budget. Many employees who live in other counties travel into Union County to work and use our services, our roads, our bridges, our emergency services. This occupational tax allows us to assess those folks some share in the cost of providing services to all of those who live and work in our county. Property tax revenue for counties was $302 million in fiscal year 2023. This accounts for 34.7% of total tax revenue collected by counties across Kentucky. All counties have an ad valorem property tax. Property taxes have traditionally been a stable, reliable revenue source for counties, but they are limited by state law in how much total revenue they can generate year over year. For many rural counties with limited alternatives, property taxes are the only real source of tax revenue. With rising property tax values over the past couple of years, many county fiscal courts have significantly reduced their county property tax rate in order to soften the blow to our property owners. County leaders understand best how skyrocketing costs impact our residents, and we've done our best to try and respond. Insurance premium taxes are another primary tax revenue option available to counties. Last year, this tax was collected in 49 counties, resulting in $77 million. This tax revenue represents 8.8% of all county taxes collected across the state. These three major revenue streams represent the lion's share of how counties fund their operations. But as I said earlier, these taxes vary from county to counties, and not all counties collect all three. You can see on this map where each tax is collected. Earlier I shared how much as a percentage of total revenues each tax represents at a statewide level. But when you drill down to specific counties, the percentages are even more diverse. Obviously, for a county with no occupational tax or insurance premium tax, the property tax revenue accounts for nearly all revenue to fund county operations. On the flip side, there are a few counties where workforce numbers are so strong that the occupational tax revenue can account for 70 to 80% of all county revenues. You can see in this slide how Union County's tax model looks very different from Harlan. Judge Mosley doesn't have an occupational tax, but has a much more dependency on property tax. These differences from county to county explain why we have to be so careful about discussions about any one-size-fits-all approach to county taxation. We believe elected county officials know best which options work best for their counties. CAECO and our county leaders have long supported efforts to provide for more consumption tax options at the local level, but we also understand the constitutional hurdles this presents. We urge the General Assembly to approach this discussion with full appreciation for the need to protect our current revenue streams. The cost of doing business at the county level is being affected by the same pressures that each of us are feeling in our personal finances. County officials know full well how the tax burden affects our residents. We must all work together to keep taxes at the lowest possible level while still providing for the mandated services counties must deliver, and we look forward to working with you in doing so. For our final priority, let's turn it back over to Jim.
Excuse me. Thanks, Judge Onan. I'm coached often to try to slow down and talk slower. It's not in my makeup, so I apologize if it feels like we're rushing through anything here. But our final area of focus today is on transportation. If you want to get at the heart of what counties do, there's not much that gets the attention of fiscal court members more than when you talk about maintaining roads and bridges in their care. And if you look at this map, I think you'll understand why. This map shows all the county roads in Kentucky, and except for Fort Knox, a few lakes, a couple of mountaintops, and the land between the lakes, the state's just about completely covered with county roads. Counties rightfully care about this issue because we're responsible for more than half of the publicly traveled road miles in this state. With there just being shy of 80,000 miles of publicly traveled road, counties maintain more than 40,000 of those. Additionally, counties own and maintain around 5,000 bridges. That's over a third of all the bridges traveled by the public. So transportation infrastructure is important to us. It is the essential way people get to and from their homes, to work, to school. County roads serve as vital arteries for agriculture, coal, manufacturing. As Leader Thayer earlier described, things had to get somewhere and they had to travel along a county road to get there. You name it, it travels on our county roads. And in our 21st century economy, where some of us get nearly daily deliveries now from Amazon, UPS, or Walmart, county roads are becoming more important as just-in-time delivery to our homes. We're incredibly grateful for the General Assembly recognizing how important this is. You all created a new program this last session called the County Priority Projects Program, and you set aside $20 million for that project and allowed for counties to apply for money from that program going forward. This program was designed to assist us with some of our very worst roads that would be classified as an 8, 9, or a 10, with 10 being the very worst rating. The deadline for submission of that application process was just a few weeks ago, and KYTC received requests from 118 of 120 counties, totaling about $140 million in requests. And those are projects deemed eligible that ranked 8, 9, or 10. On top of the CPP program, you all also set aside another $25 million in the budget for the County City Bridge program, further recognizing the need that we have outpaces the revenues that we have at the county level. So again, we offer here today a sincere thanks. We're not asking for more. We're simply saying thank you for maintaining and improving on the funding that we now have for our city and our county roads and bridges. The primary source of revenue we have that we rely on at the county level is the motor fuels tax. And that's the portion of the state tax that is divvied up with counties. It's called the county road aid. As you heard testified to earlier, that's 18.3% that comes to counties. Those CRA funds create the foundation for county's local road maintenance program. We pay for road employees, dump trucks, roadside mowing, snow removal. All the maintenance expenses come out of those funds in addition to the paving of our county roads. County road aid is vital. And quite frankly, these dollars really haven't kept up, the county road aid portion, over the years, just like everything that's adversely affected by inflation. So has been the cost of maintaining roads and bridges. In 2014, just 10 years ago, the county road aid portion totaled $152 million. That's the amount that came to counties through the CRA distribution. And this fiscal year, the estimate is that county road aid will be about $147 million. And so as we've all felt in our pocketbooks, a dollar today doesn't buy what it did 10 years ago. When adjusted for inflation, particularly with the National Highway Construction Cost Index applied, we really have about $144 million in less buying power than we did even 10 years ago. To put it simply, we would need nearly double the amount of revenue today just to have the same highway construction purchasing power we had in 2014. And we're not asking for that. We're just simply helping you better understand the situation. This shortfall further validates the efforts that you all have made to find other ways to help fund county roads and bridges through those programs I just mentioned. Counties are resilient, and we continue to do the very best we can to stretch our limited road and maintenance funds. I think we've all heard the saying, the most important road that anybody travels is the one in front of our own home. And so every road that's traveled is important. City streets, state highways, county roads, even those that lead sometimes to only a few residents, but those are the most important roads to those folks. So every road is important. Wrapping up our testimony, again, we just want to keep reiterating how much we appreciate what you have done for us. Again, say thank you for the opportunity to come here each year at this time, just ahead of the short session, to give you a snapshot of the things that we'll be talking about going in to the short session. We look forward to continuing the conversation. I think we are finished and able to respond to any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We do have a few questions. We'll start off with Senator Wheeler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Jim, thank you for your presentation today, and thank you for your words of thanks. I think that the General Assembly really has stepped up to the plate to try to solve a lot of solutions for rural Kentucky over the last few sessions, and it's great to hear that it's having a positive effect. You know, something that I hear from my counties repeatedly is, of course, the cost of jails. I think I have actually tried to put out a few pieces of legislation on that myself in order to rectify some of those costs. You know, and I think that, you know, I'm going to continue to work on a state level, but have you all undertaken any type of federal lobbying? Because, you know, I do think that it would be great if we could maybe try to keep some Medicaid eligibility to inmates. The medical costs are a big thing. And secondly, I mean, hopefully with the mandate that America was given last Tuesday, we can actually start making America great again without pushing drugs in the jail on inmates through Suboxone and other types of dope that you see dealt on the streets just about as much as fentanyl back where I'm from. I mean, this type of stuff, I like to call them the walking dead, because that's what they're creating when they send these people to medication-assisted treatment all the time. And you see people lined up halfway around the block to get them a pill so that they can function on a daily basis. I mean, we need to figure out ways to get this dope out of the system instead of putting more of it actually into the incarceration system. But one thing I am hearing about also, and a complaint that I hear from my locals, is that the county jails are so full of state inmates because they're trying to balance the books, that the local criminals that are out there stealing everything and causing a bunch of problems, they'll go into court and within 24 hours, they may have 20 or 30 beds out of a 400-bed jail to house the local reprobates rather than, and they're back out causing trouble again. And, decent people shouldn't have to deal with that. Yeah. So what are your proposals to try to deal with some of that?
Well, there was a lot in there, Senator Wheeler, and I had mentioned earlier, if any questions other than road funding came, that I would defer to these two guys here. But on the jail issue, and again, I think both Judge Onan and Judge Mosley know this because they're real active with NACO, in particular on the Medicaid question. That is something that our national association has worked very hard on trying to get some understanding of that. And you all understand this. There's no question about whether or not somebody in jail is going to be on the taxpayer's dime for medical care. It's just a question of the source of funds. And so many of these individuals were Medicaid eligible before they were incarcerated. And so you're just simply making that now, the way it is now, the responsibility of either the county or the state to figure out how to pay for that with another source of funds. So again, our association nationally, NACO, has worked really hard. There are some pilot programs across the country, and in fact, Kentucky, that's a little bit of what Judge Mosley was alluding to earlier. Our state's looking at some of that. I think the governor has applied for a waiver for some portion of a near end of sentence where Medicaid could be something that inmates were eligible to re-enroll in before they left, which it certainly would help us at some level. It's maybe a small amount, but it would help take some of that medical cost off. You mentioned the ADA requirement. Again, we're on the receiving end of that.
I'd highly encourage you. Clearly, if this is that upcoming rule, it sounds like something that's not in place right now and something that, maybe with a little bit of lobbying with the change in philosophy coming into Washington, hopefully, that we might be able to, prevent before it happens.
That piece is very challenging for us. And Senator Wheeler, many of our local officials share your personal views on that. I mean, we've had county jailers, county judges, others who've just simply said, we don't want to do that. We don't want to do that administering of those medications because they just don't agree with it. So it puts us in a really tough spot. But Judge Mosley, I know the jail issue you've been pretty involved in.
Yeah, and Senator Wheeler, the point that you made about overcrowding of state inmates and not having room for county inmates, that is very true across many counties. Some counties are having that very problem. In Harlan County, we're not in that particular shape because we have a 235-bed facility. We have, as of last Thursday, 86 state inmates, about 120 there that are waiting adjudication through felony charges that are still on the county dime, and then about 30 serving out misdemeanor charges. So it is, as Adam alluded to, when you see one county, you see one county. It is different in each respective county on the issue that is complicating them. I will say our jailers have been working very closely with us. They are. I'm very fortunate to have a great partnership with my jailer, B.J. Burkhart, who watches every cent that goes through there. And if it was not for his oversight, our situation would be significantly worse.
Thank you. Senator Elkins has a question.
Judge Mosley, I'll stay with you. I hear you say when you see one county, you see one county, but where every county, I think, has something in common is the cost of housing inmates, whether you have a jail or not, is crippling the counties. I know in Clark County, in 2017, we spent $680,000 out of the general fund to prop up the jail, I guess you would say. This past year was $2.2 million, and that seems to be the case across the Commonwealth. So the two of the biggest costs, of course, deputy jailers' salary is probably the biggest cost, but two of the biggest costs are medical and food expenses. Have you looked at doing something across the Commonwealth where all 120 counties use their buying power or leverage to help with those expenses? And I'll say this too, for this committee to consider and think about. It costs about, depending on the jail, $50, $55 a day to house an inmate. The state typically pays $35 a day, and if you're housing federal inmates, $50 to $65. I've heard all those different ranges for housing federal inmates, which really is a break-even cost basically for federal inmates, because they do have more expense associated with federal inmates than they do state inmates. But we're going to have to figure out a way to help these counties with these $2 million plus, whether they have a jail or not, costs that they're facing every year. Even if you have closed your jail, and I have 2 counties in my district that don't have a jail, the transportation cost, and then they have to pay another county to house their county inmates, it's still costing them $50 a day to house their inmates. So I don't know. I just think if there's a way we can use our buying power in all 120 counties, or the 70 jails or whatever could use their buying power, maybe something to look at. I'm sure you have, but any progress on that, Judge Mosley?
Thank you for the question, Senator Elkins, and you're very aware about that issue based on your background. My understanding is through my jailer, and I know the Jailers Association works closely on initiatives to try to streamline things. They're oftentimes, as it relates to like inmate medical, for instance, there just isn't a whole lot of providers out there that provide that service. Food, a lot of them have shifted to a more comprehensive, larger group management system. And for instance, our county and many other counties across the state utilize a service called CalWell, which has helped reduce the amount of food costs. Unfortunately, the really the high number that's related to our jail budget is employee costs, and just being flat out honest with you, we do not pay our deputy jailers enough, but we're handcuffed on what we can pay them because of the situation with the revenue. But the cost to incarcerate them and to have people providing that oversight through those employees daily have been the largest burden that we experience.
Follow up, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
I will say this, you're absolutely correct that we don't pay our deputy jailers enough. I've toured those jails and heard those doors close behind me, and I know that I'm with people getting paid $12 and $14 an hour to do that, and they can go flip hamburgers for the same cost. So you're right about that. But I also know that is the reason that the costs have gone from the hundreds of thousands of dollars annually now into the millions of dollars across the Commonwealth. It's that way. So but that's not something I think that we can. I just don't think we can pay less, to be sure. Correct. So, and I know that's not what you're suggesting. No, so I think we're going to have to look at other costs like food, and maybe everybody use a system like CalWell or something. I know most of my counties use CalWell also. Maybe all of them do. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, Senator Elkins.
Senator Mays Bledsoe has a question.
Thank you, Chair, and my colleagues make excellent points, so I won't rehash them. I thank you very much for your presentation and from KLC's. You know, both of you, your associations represent so many different advocate groups, and your job is to come advocate on behalf of all of them, which is sometimes challenging, and becoming more challenging, to be quite frankly honest. And I proudly served on KLC's board, and I think having been a member of Fayette County government, I have done both. I can be a cheerleader for both of you, and I don't have mixed feelings about that. Because at the end of the day, people really don't know what a county road is or a city road or a state road. They just want it paved. They just want their roads to be clean and safe, and they want to pay their taxes easily and efficiently. I was in Georgia yesterday at a women's legislative conference, and I said, you know, there's only 2 states in the country that have more counties than Kentucky, Georgia and Texas. That's right. And yet we're seeing more people move to our cities just as a population. And the demands on cities is changing too. And I say all that to say, at the end of the day, as our revenue continues to change and as we move towards consumption, we're going to have some really difficult conversations about how we pay for services, regardless of who does it. People still want them. And it's our job to provide them as elected officials wherever we happen to serve. And I think it's probably time we stop talking about it theoretically and really start talking about it in practice. How do we fund the services, regardless if it's a city or county, to serve people? And what is our job to do that well? That's going to be challenging, but I think it's time we start having those conversations. Thank you.
Senator McDaniel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Guys, so obviously, jails being your biggest issue in roads, and I want to talk on the jail thing for a second here. Jails have always been a county function, as you know. But I think, to Senator Wheeler's point, very well made, a lot of your lobbying effort needs to be put through NACO and the Sheriff's Association, because obviously in most states that's who handles the jails, right? But I mean, these federal mandates are driving a large portion of what you've got going on there. This is coming from the guy that threw the fit back in the day about the fact that we spend more on inmate dental care. Think about this. We spend more on inmates' teeth than pediatric cancer research. Tell me that that's right. But it's the nature of this. But when we start talking about the drugs and the medically assisted treatment that's going to become mandatory, and all these things come down through federal regulation. And these are things that drive up costs. It's federal regulation that drives up local costs. But then we talk about possibly putting these folks on Medicaid, right, to ease the county budget. Well, there only comes so much that, the federal government obviously is not exactly have its financial house in order. And what happens when we're at a state that's already at a third of the population on Medicaid, when we add even more people to that, if there's a formulaic change, instead of having 90-10 and 70-30 populations, what if we have 60-40 populations? And then the state's budget becomes a disaster. I appreciate the tone that you've taken on this issue. I think there is some work to be done that could potentially be done. But I want to emphasize one thing. Jails aren't a city issue, and we should not attempt to divert from what could be a productive conversation by bringing in folks who just aren't relevant to the conversation. I think that that didn't go I don't think that was a particularly helpful idea, and I would encourage you guys to look away from that, because I think there is a cooperation that could be, there's some cooperative efforts that could be made to be meaningful, and let's not try to loop folks in that don't belong in the conversation. Thank you.
And the final question, Senator Mills.
I'm going to come. I have one comment and two comments, and I'm going to try to be brief because we do have a special presentation at the end of this. Want to make sure everybody stays in their seats for that as well. First thing is, when you drive from Henderson County to Vanderburgh County, Judge Onan probably seen this, there's a billboard that says, Vanderburgh, come be a deputy jailer in Vanderburgh County, starting at $52,000 a year. So that's what we're competing against. So that's all I'll say about jails. And then the final thing, not to be divisive, but I got to mention libraries, and our PVA in Henderson County, and I believe Union County does this too, puts out a very cool little graphic every year that shows when they send out the tax bills where their county tax goes. And everybody, I get calls all the time that the library tax is very close to what the county tax is. And one of my questions for you, y'all may choose not to comment on this and come back, and I've talked to Jim and Shelley about this, but I think we seriously need to consider giving county governments the ability to manage county libraries if they lower the tax rate. I believe county governments could manage it much better. Libraries these days are not the libraries of the past. And I know it's a very touchy subject, and we'll be overrun by yellow M&Ms if we talk about this. But it is truly an issue, and folks are upset about how much money the library tax is. So I'd ask y'all to consider that, and maybe we can have some more conversations about that. But I do think we could have a library in our communities for less costs, and it could be managed better by the county governments. Y'all choose to have a comment, Jim?
Well, that wasn't a question either. I've been real careful not to respond to not questions.
Very true. I agree 100%.
But I will say, I think this goes to the earlier comment about our hypersensitivity. I think anybody who's been a county judge, understands that tax bill that goes out that has a number of taxing district taxes on it that we typically get blamed, for the county taxes, right? And there's so much on there. And so when we do make the efforts, many fiscal courts do, to try to offset those painful assessment increases and other things that happen, sometimes organically, obviously with the inflation factor, to lower the county rate. And then you see other rates that don't lower, or in fact maybe even some take an increase. And overall the taxpayer just sees a big increase in their tax bill, not just on assessments alone. And so with that in mind, I think you have heard over the years county officials talk about, that concern that special taxing districts, sometimes their rate is higher even than the county. And I think when we looked at this a few years ago on the libraries in particular, I think there were maybe 18 or 20 counties where the tax rate assessed on property for libraries was higher than the county fiscal court rate. So it's something that is on our radar screen. We don't go looking for fights, I promise, and that one does stir up a lot of folks to talk about. But again, I think, I don't remember, maybe Senator Bledsoe, someone earlier said, at the end of the day, taxpayers are paying their taxes, county, city, they don't really see all those distinctions. So it's our job to try to figure out how to minimize that as much as possible. So I think we would look at anything that ultimately lended itself to something that was better for how we do government at the county level. Maybe that's a non-answer.
Okay, with that, we appreciate your testimony and what you had to present today. We've got one more item on the agenda. It's a special presentation because we not only have several House members and senators that will no longer be with us next year, but we've got one other member of our group that will no longer be with us after November the 27th, I believe. We have Cheryl Walters over here. And Cheryl, if you don't mind, if you'll join Senator Mills down front. She has served for, 45 years? And I only thought she was 39 years old. So, when she was 12. Yes. And, we, as legislators, we're in front of the TV cameras, we're out front and everybody listens to us and everything, but the real work's done behind the scenes. And our LRC staff, our members, they're priceless. They're the glue that holds this place together, and we appreciate that. And Cheryl, I've never heard one negative word about you. It's always been outstanding, and we're proud of your service, and we're grateful to have had you. We will miss you. Don't forget, you could always take about a month off and come back part-time or something else. We could find a place. So, but anyway, we just want you to know how much we appreciate you, and thank you so much for your years of service. The Commonwealth is grateful. So with that, we will we'll adjourn. We'll stand adjourned, and then we'll get a few more pictures for Cheryl down here. Thank you very much.